Teacher, do we need to complete all those 4 questions? Hello,
So yeah,
teacher.
as I said, you need to complete the 4 problems. You need to finish activities.
Okay, teacher. Teacher.
So basically, if I'm having like something like this, I will have to put the good answers anyway. So yeah, here you see that you have 4 problems. So you fill the answers, and you see that in fact I will just do that like this. So it asks me to check, and you cannot go further if you don't have the good answer. So that's where the help is helping, and otherwise you can pass it. Probably you can find it, but normally the help is even providing a good understanding of the answers, so you can read the help and move forward. But you have the 4 problems to do. Did you have any trouble to be able to do the exercise? Is it something that you're at ease with? Did you use the help?
For me, I don't, but I finish it.
Interesting question. Is it something that you have been, in a sense, learning in also more in your education, either in high school or university before?
Yeah, when we learn in high school, I think we have seen this kind of graph.
Mhm.
And I finish it now. And what should I do?
Yeah. Just finish with no worries. We have some time. We will. And it's important. That's also part of the exam. So just like 5 minutes more if you need to finish. If you have troubles, as I said, just to help you moving forward. Here, for example, if I adding like wrong answers, sorry, but like random information basically. So it says to me to try again. But if I'm saying get help, so I have all the information. So and even at the end, you have the answers that are possible. Sometimes you have more than just what you have. And you can also go back to the video if you need. But here you have all the information, so read it carefully. It's important to understand these kind of elements because at the end, the graph like this and the information that are inside are key on the data literacy and data science. So just take 5 more minutes if you need.
Hello, Professor. Hello. Hello.
Yep. What's your question?
Yes, I saw your message. Do you need us to send you?
Yeah, just
our
an empty
email?
email. Yeah, just you go to your UP email and just send me an email. Even if it's empty, it's okay. I have troubles with students management platform and a few things like this. It's okay for the attendance, but I cannot extract your email, something like this.
Oh, okay.
So for the exams, it's a bit tricky. So I prefer if you can just send me an email, and so like this I can validate and cross-check that.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
All right. So basically, this kind of graphs and interpretations are really on the what we will call the statistical interpretation. So you see something, and the most important is for you to be able to describe it and to understand that. So here we are using a lot like the intercept and these kind of elements that are like really like mathematical, statistical, I will say vocabulary. So that's something that is important to understand because at some point you might be able to discuss with some people that will use this kind of vocabulary and so on. Overall, for us, so those graph interpretations are very important. It's coming in. And that's really like the elements that you have. So that's the basic, I will say, and that's what you see. So the website is even saying that we are in a course or of the 8th grade. So that's like when you're 13, 14 years old, basically in the US-based kind of model, of course, but like that's kind of high school content that you could have. Okay, so that's something that is important. Of course, it's something that we don't use every day. So sometimes we are, even for me, going back to this vocabulary time to time, if it has been a while, yeah, it's not so common. So that's not so important to be exact. But the most important is that you can understand. So you can understand when the function is below an axis, above an axis, that's in an interval, you have some information, and so on. So that's the kind of elements that are key on more your interpretation. So understanding that between, for example, 0 and 0.5 on the x-axis, that is here t, so time, most of the time could have been using for the things. Clearly, when you see t, it's something like this. And here we have more the function that is here that we see on the y-axis. So that's the kind of elements that are a bit important. And particularly to understand like when it's decreasing, how big it's decreasing, increasing. Here it's a cycle that is equal. But if I was going to, just keep one out just to move faster. If I'm moving to other kind of graphs, I can see that I have to understand these kind of elements. Okay, just on like between these levels. So before, when x is negative, so inferior to 0, I have also y values that are equal to 0 or negative. When it's positive, I have only positive values, always increasing by 1, and these kind of elements. So that's very important to see these kind of elements, to understand the axis, the values, different points, the increase or decrease between the points, and that's something that is very important. So if I'm making it, why don't you have the right version? Give me a second. So if we are moving forward, the most important for you, okay, you have to understand the statistical background and to be able to interpret a graph a bit like this, but even more importantly, what you have to understand. All right. So now we should look. So the most important for you is to be able to interpret it in terms of business as well. So yes, you need the statistical to understand like how big it's increasing and so on. But something that is key for you is like, how can you explain what you see? And so here I put the link to something that is important to have different kind of vocabularies, different phrases that you should have. So that's this kind of elements. And after that, to put that simply, also, it's here, for example, when it's going up, it's an increase or it's rising and so on and so on. So that's the kind of vocabulary that you can use and say, when the time is this one, we can see that this value is increasing and so on. If you have a lot of variation, so you have a lot of change, you can say that it's a fluctuation, for example. And you have like a few things like this that are here. So I recommend you, for example, to have a look at that. You have even a look at the video. If you're not at ease with this kind of elements, that's kind of, I would say, basic data literacy thing. We could go a bit further, but at the end, I think it's something that you know more or less, and we will put that more into practice, I would say, during the exercise. But I recommend you, if you're really not at ease with these kind of elements, to go further on these kind of resources that are very accessible and that are helping to gather a bit more this kind of graph interpretation. So that's something that is one of the key elements. So keep in mind that interpretation is something that is also very important because we are interpreting visualization. So first level, as I said, is more the mathematical, statistical analysis. So you understand what's going on. But after that, you have to explain it, as we said. So you have to share the result at some point. So that's why if you're able to put easy words on that, it's easier. And when you are interpreting a graph, you always have to be critical. Okay, we talk a lot about like curiosity, critical analysis, analytical thinking. One thing that is important is like also to be able to understand that data is kind of not lying by itself, but the way you show the data and tell the story, what you focus on can bring an influence on the truth or being biased. So meaning that you are lying with the data. Sometimes you want to lie with the data, sometimes you don't want. And you do that because you made a mistake or you didn't even see that. So it's not so much a problem to have at the beginning something that is a bit biased. It's more that you should be critical about it. So you create a graph, the automatic scale that was been creating by your tool that you're using is leading to a kind of analysis, but you know that at the end, with your background, it's not true, so you will ask yourself some question. Is the scale consistent? What are the minimum and maximum of the axis? Are the axes clear? Is it like respecting the same scales in terms of graphs that you see? One problem that we have with the 3D graphs, for example, is that it can give a lot of importance on something that you have in front and not so much on the back, because you have the perspective that is using. So in fact, if you look at like the volume that it's taking on your slide or in your graph, it's bigger, even if at the end the proportion is smaller. So that's the kind of things that are very important. If you have at the end not just like a one graph kind of thing, but more a matrix or plots that are going together. So you have graphs that are just two graphs together, two curves. For example, you have one curve and one bar chart on the same graph, and potentially you have two axes. Be sure on which one is related to which one. Check if it's the same scale, because potentially one is like the population in million, and the other one is the rate of birth over time. So that's something that is not at all the same scale, same value. So you have to be sure that you understand that and that it's clear. Because like if you are presenting two bars or two elements in your graph and you don't put that in, that means that you are missing something in the explanation for your audience as well. It has to be clear for you. It has to be clear for who you are presenting to. Can we understand clearly the data and like the kind of data points that we have is something that is also important when you read a graph. And we talked a bit about that last time. Do we have like outliers? So values that are a bit specific that we can see. And maybe you can ask yourself, is it too good to be true? So too pretty in a sense, that's what it means. It seems that, oh yeah, everything is going well. Are we sure we are not missing something? So always bringing like your business knowledge and curiosity in the game. So that's all you need to have in the interpretation side. So being able to go to more the mathematical and statistical side and the capacity to analyze. After that is the capacity to interpret multiple information, graphs, data points, indicators that you have, and that you can bring together to create an analysis that is compelling to answer the business question that you had. So just something that is very important to keep in mind. So we are here in, and sorry, based on that, I just forgot to put the recording, so I will just put that. All good. So basically what I was saying, so the interpretation is very important on both levels, mathematical, statistical, and then trying to explain that to someone in easy words. So that's how you can really do a full interpretation. Now, when we move a bit further on the analysis side, so we need to articulate different graphs, different indicators, different interpretations that you are doing. Okay, to combine that means to be able to extract the information that you're already looking about to answer the question that you are looking at. Because like we ask a question at the beginning and we are moving forward to answer this question. And that's where the analysis help you to have that, but analyzing the results and bringing it all together is just jumping between the analysis and the answer to the question. So that's where when you write your analysis and you start to share the results, you're already answering the question and advising. And that's what we will focus a bit more now. So that's something that is very important to go back to the basics in a sense. So if you're not at ease, here we have a lot of content. So we have on Khan Academy where we just did the exercise to, I would say we have almost too many content, but we have like a few things that are very key for you. And it will help you anything that you want to do, moving more to the data analytics side. If you stay more on the machine learning and AI, particularly on the engineering of it, you will need a bit less. But I will say that those basic skills are still very important. So interpreting a graph like this, as we said, is like 8th grade level in that side. So it's something that is very important. And that's where you have here, for example, the capacity to read properly the histogram, the mean and median, and all those kind of elements that we discussed a bit. Okay, and that's why also we didn't spend too much time on that, because we can really spend a lot of time on all of these elements, but it's also something that you should have already in your background at some point, maybe not super well, maybe not super activated. And here we are, as it's really the point on that, to gain the fundamentals of data science and data literacy in a business context. So we spent a lot of time to understand processes, what it is, what it means to get a job in the space, what are the kind of definitions that are existing around, and all of that, just because that's what can help you to make the jump. But if you want to go further on that, you have to be sure that those skills are covered. And here, so you have like, for example, the preparation to enter like college, university in the US, and you have the validation of it. So if you already want to validate like progressively the skills, I will say that's the pure basic levels that you should have. That's for sure. Now this one as well is like kind of overall statistics and probability. And if you already want to work on those kind of elements, that's more or less like the elements that are there. So here we come back to correlation coefficients, for example. That's something that we discussed last time. You have more what is linked to all the study. Okay, so yes, we have the machine learning, we have the AI, we have all these elements. But one thing that data was used a lot for was for survey or study analysis at the beginning. So that's where you have the sampling, that's where you have the test between what you find in your sample and what is in reality. So when you do a census, for example, to understand your population at a country level, that's the kind of things that you are doing. Probability are also very important with statistics because it's helping for all those kind of functions, distributions level as well. So here it's going further than what we need, but at the same time, doing this kind of analysis, if you're in the data science space, is something that should master at some point. Not right now. Your goal is not to be a master on that right now, but that's the kind of thing. And if you really want to be at a level that is like helping you to enter any kind of projects, that's really this kind of two levels that you need. Here, something that is interesting, I will say, is that it's not specifically on getting to a math background specifically, but there is a particular part on the math side, and you see that on the math side. So you have a few things that are interesting. For example, problem solving and data analysis. You have the two levels, so basic and there, and you have the advanced as well. So that's like, for example, the course that you could look at on that side. And on the last ones, that's definitely like all the elements when you really want to be like a junior in it. You have all the elements. This one is a basic one to get ready at the beginning, and this one is ready to master it. So very important in our case, we are in the fundamentals. So fundamentals is meaning that you have to understand why these skills are very important. And we discussed, for example, quickly about continuous and categorical data. So here you understand, you should be able to understand these kind of distinctions and to move forward. Quantitative data is like not the same than categorical. We will not use the same kind of elements. And that's all these kind of elements that are there. So without going too far, that's more or less progressively the skills that you need to understand. And we were talking about like a correlation coefficient between two continuous variables last time. If now we want to use two categorical variables, we will use a chi-square, for example. So we don't have the time to go for all of it. We are not in a statistics course. We are not on this kind of things. We are here to bring the business side of it. But be sure that if you really want to, at some point, go further on these kind of elements, you could go further on those kind of skills. And definitely, this website is one of the good ones. Very strong on the basics, on the math, and putting like all the elements that are overall there, and it's fully free. So do not hesitate to go further on that. Because practically speaking, you probably have like a strong competency and skill on more the computer science, the databases side, and potentially even the business side, based on your experience. What you are probably missing a bit on the data science and data literacy is this kind of going back to basic statistics, probabilities, and other skills like this. So if you don't feel like you are good enough, in your opinion, on that, based on what you would like to do next, I really recommend you to have a look and to go a bit further. Do you have any questions linked to that? No? All right. So if we are moving forward, you don't know what you don't know. Okay, I don't know what I don't know. We are always in a space that is a tech space that is moving very fast. And even when you know something that is a basic on statistics or probability, sometimes the way you use it is not known at all. And things will evolve even more. I didn't know if I don't know if you saw in the news, but like we have a new DeepMind AI algorithm that just did a huge breakthrough in terms of how we do maths. So when you do matrix multiplication in computer science, it's always very tricky. And you use that a lot in probabilities and statistics. And the machine learning side is something that will help us a lot because we have now, in a sense, an AI that is helping us to do these kind of operations, instructions in a way that we were not doing before. So that's something that is more efficient and that is something new. So you could be strong in maths, learn something, but like now you can do that in a different way. And so when you work with new kind of formats that are the images and not just the studies, if you compare 20 years of evolution into space, you need to learn, you need to adapt, you need to really adopt a lifelong learning approach. So that's something that is key overall, and there is no problem to not knowing something. You cannot know everything. As we said, it's a very large and evolving space, so there is no problem with it. So if I can really recommend you something, it's during the projects to also go further on the things that you don't know. So we will work from next week, and I will move just after that on that details on the evaluation and so on. You have those kind of elements that are very important that you can explore during the projects. We will go for the tools and the manipulation, but you will have also to interpret and these kind of elements in a sense to go further on what we have been doing up to now on a concrete, bigger project. Okay, so we will do hands-on labs and having the projects, and that's very important for you to go further on the skills that you don't necessarily master. Why? Because we will do that together as well. So you will have time to ask questions, you will work with others, and so on. So that's something that is very important. And so combine the knowledge that you already have, in a sense, with the rest. So the processes and methodologies is what we focused on, the business side of it. But now we will more on the manipulation, that is more tools based. But if you have some knowledge that you feel that is like missing a bit, do not hesitate to go a bit further and to ask questions. So on the evaluation side, something that is very important. Next week, we will do a first exam that is around an hour long. And the goal is that for one indicator, you will have to work around different elements that are linked to the data literacy. So how do you read the data? How do you understand that? How can you combine these informations to be able to analyze and argue with data? So if we go for so up, for example, if we go on that, and we can take any indicator, so that's one example, but I can go for example, anything else. So that's all the kind of indicator that we have, but we can go for example, that kind of elements. Here we have a tool that is helping us a lot. So we just need to be able to understand that. Here you have already the search bar that is helping you to work between the countries and the indicators. So you can do whatever you want from that. You have all the details on the information source, I will say, and details about that. You can share the things, and you can also have like some elements that are helping you to interpret and analyze. You can export the data as well. So that's very important for you to understand this kind of environments. You have 3 different kind of visualizations that you can have. Depending on what you are doing, it's making sense or not. If you have only one country, this one is not making a lot of sense. But if you add a country, for example, we are moving forward into our analysis, and we can compare Cambodia to Indonesia, for example, and so on. So here we are moving also the information because we are moving which year we are looking at, and after that we have also potentially other countries' information that could be around. Okay, so based on that, and we used it before, you should be able to read the information, to even read the raw data, downloading it and looking at it if you want, to create new indicators if you want. Otherwise, you already have like a few indicators that you can use to go further in your analysis, but you should also first be able to interpret this graph. And without even comparing that yet, being able to share something about this. So if we are really trying to understand the evolution of it, you should be able to recommend elements for that particular topic, and that's what will be the exam next week. So you will be assigned a specific topic, and you will have different elements to answer and to manipulate and to argue with information. That means also sharing your analysis in a very concrete and summarized way. That's the data literacy side that we have been doing from the beginning, from the analysis, and so on. So now, moving to the second side, that will be the week after, we will have more a kind of knowledge part, where it's more like linked to the quizzes that we did before, all the kind of short questions that you had at the beginning of the sessions and so on, that will be similar to that. So understanding what kind of analytics is doing what, the data science process, or what kind of jobs exist, or these kind of elements are exactly the questions that you will be asked for. And now, so the last part, that will be that so both are individual, and after that, we will start as well to work on more a teamwork project that is a real life use case where you will have to work more to the end-to-end data science project. And we will focus on labs demo in a sense, plus 2 hours where you can work on the project, and that's the question, leveraging specific tools that we are asking for and linked to the tools. So that's really the idea on working to first the data sites is a kind of data sources, and after that, no surprises, the kind of we stay on the Google environments because also of the UP Google account that you have, that is helping a lot. So we'll continue on the spreadsheets, Data Studio, and the 2 sites that we will explore a bit more are Google BigQuery, that are more on the data warehouse, so where we combine and consolidate information in a database model, and Google Colaboratory, that is a notebook in Python that is helping to do some analysis and without pushing too much on the implementation of it, but more on the exploration and understanding, I would say. So that will be the different elements that we will focus on. And so before moving to the rest of the analysis and in a sense interpretation plus combination of interpretations, more exactly, that is bringing to the analysis, that is helping to share the results that you're looking at to answer the question. Do you have any questions linked to the evaluation? So no questions? Perfect. So we are moving on, and do not hesitate, in a sense, to ask anything if you want, mostly by email for this kind of official elements. All right. So if we are moving forward now on our analysis. So today we will, as I said, we will finish a bit more the kind of introductions and knowledge side, so more the slides and presentation, and after that having a bit more of practice. So here we are clearly having some elements that is helping us to now analyze the results in a way that we are moving forward in our value chain. So we started with a lot of things on the business and data understanding, and after that, moving to the building the visualization, particularly on that side, and with few indicators, being able to analyze now the results. So like this, we can answer the questions, as I said, share the results that are advising, and so we can act after that on those recommendations. So something that is very important is to understand the business process. So you have to understand what context you are working on. If you're working in a kind of survey side, what was the methodology of the survey? Were the people that were asked for the questions, what was the format? Was it like online? Was it like filled by an intern after that during the process? Because it's helping a lot, for example, to identify mistakes in the value and so on. So what is the process and where the data is coming from is key. So that's not only possible to understand that in the data analytics side of it. Definitely when you work on IT, you understand that this part of data management and where the data is coming from and how it's done is very important for whatever reason you want to have, to build a better product, to bring the information to someone, to aggregate, and so on. So here, to be in a sense able to do a good analysis, we have to be objective and to understand the context. And if the data is used properly, that means that we have no bias in the process and in your analysis, then it will not lie. Because we just said that like the way we present the information, the way we do the things can bring a misunderstanding and potentially an influential part of it that is voluntary. So that's the things that we don't want when we're already doing analysis. And now you have even regulations that are forcing to prove the process that you're using on some analysis or some insights, but even more on the AI modeling. Okay? So part of it is now very clear, particularly in Europe, and they are pushing forward. And they will force, for example, the big companies to show the processes and how the data is used to modelize and push information. So that's something that is very key. So try to understand a bit more what happened in your data over time and really explore what's going on in your process, where the data is coming from and how it's generated and how you now enrich it and so on. So always also be kind of interrogative on like where the data is coming from at the beginning, but also at any time in your process. So when you put someone in a something in a web page or something into an AI model or something into a dashboard, you need to understand where it's coming from, how it has been aggregated, who did this kind of process, and so on. So the data lineage, as we say that in the data engineering process, it means that where I'm going to put this inside, so the average age of the Cambodian population in the World Bank data that I have, where the data is coming from is important. All right. So that's why you need to generate indicators to visualize. When you do in a sense, a summary statistics, so you do, for example, an average, you do a median, you explore this kind of standard deviation, you do graphs, and so on. That's exactly what we call the data exploration. You try to identify things in your data. You try to understand, for example, if there is an outlier, you try to understand if you have issues in the quality of the data. You really explore and you try at the end to prove with the numbers and the fact that you are showing that you can scientifically say something. That's something that's why in a sense we call this process a data science process. So it's really to try to have a methodology that is helping us to be sure that what we say is valid. And that's why we need to understand both where the data is coming from and what we are doing. And linked to this methodology is something that is key, that is more linked to the statistics. Won't go too far on that here, but that's the same. So if it's the case, average year of the first birth for Cambodia and one that is in Vietnam with the same indicator, and you have a difference that is 21 to 19. Is it a big difference? That's impossible to say by default. In some cases, yes, you will find that is a significant difference. In some other cases, it's not. Helping you to validate are the same, helping you to say, yes, there is really a difference. And that's important when you really are working with this kind of sensitive information and analysis that you want to do, because that's not exploration anymore. You're not looking that there is a difference. You are trying to say, no, there is not just a difference of value, there is now the need to validate if this difference is real. And that's where it's not just comparing numbers, it's a lot of different information. And here you see, for example, like ANOVA, that was exactly one of the analyses that we can run to be able to compare that. And the same, we should be able to find, for example, the correlation analysis with the R that we were looking at last time, that was the correlation indicator. And at the same time, we should be able to find the chi-square that I just discussed. So that's all the kind of analysis, tests, and statistical proof that you have a difference. And that's something that is key when you are moving forward on the data science process. So I put some resources here, because the goal is not for you to master it right now, but if you really want to go forward on those kind of skills, it's something that is key, and particularly understanding these kind of elements when you try to modelize data is something that is important. Because what are you doing when you're doing, for example, a machine learning model? You are trying to validate patterns that are proving a difference. That means that you can predict it. So that means that you have something that is influencing on something else. And all these kind of subtests are helping you when you're exploring the data and working with to prove these kind of elements as well. So you don't always have to go back to that, but that's an element that is very important on all the data modeling and going forward onto that we are not doing so much in this course, as I shared at the beginning, because that's not our role to do that. We are really here to bring you the fundamentals that can help you to navigate the space. So that's what I can share on the analyze the results at the theoretical level. We don't need to do that too much. We did already like the summary statistics. We saw a few things on the visualization, and there is no other options than practicing. So that's what we will do just after. But just before that, I will just cover very quickly the advise and act side. We discussed it a bit on the data literacy side. The data storytelling and the way to convince is key. So even this morning, I was reading something on the management and leadership and the capacity to build a presentation. And it's always the same. How can you bring a story that is convincing, and how can you attract your audience? Okay. You are the person that has a message to give. Either it's on the brief, on the quick summary and a small paragraph, or either it's like a physical presentation. You will not leverage the same elements, but you should be able to share with your team. So you should convince people around you that what you're doing is good. Why? And sure, very shortly being able to give really the why it's important in the process that you are doing. That's very key. Unfortunately, in a sense, if you're the best expert on databases, on data analytics, on the data science process, or being the specific task that is there, but you're never able to communicate it, you will not be seen as an expert. So the way you present, and first, so the way you speak, second, the way you write, and third, the way you can prove with facts, in a sense, are key in this kind of message that you want to bring. So I just shared, for example, like a few elements here more on the presentation side, when it's more a physical presentation, but we can find a lot of elements. So that's the kind of elements that you will be able to go and definitely be concise. One thing that is key is to bring the most importance is like to attract your audience and to be able to do that. So are you doing things online? Are you doing things like writing it? Are you doing it physically? Not physically? Speaking, not speaking, with slides, no slides? It depends. But definitely you need to bring the value to your audience. So that's like more different kind of formats, different kind of ideas that you could find on how to do the presentation. And something that is very, very important, so be sure that you're building for your audience. So whatever you are doing, even if it's a tool for someone, it's always key to go back to the user experience. So that's the first thing that you should ask to yourself. Who is the person I'm presenting to? Who is the person that I want to convince with the information that I have? And if you're not doing that, you will lose yourself and you will lose the attention of the person. And even in the tools that you are building, so if the person is looking for example, something that is more a full report on what's going on. So someone that is very quickly able to have a static information of like the key elements, potentially some facts, some insights, some visualizations, but it's static. So you give them like a PDF report on what happened like this month. Or is it something that is a dashboard? So the person like to play more with the data, to look at subpopulations, or some things like this. Filters information, sorts information, look into the information. So running themselves a sort of extra analysis, that's potentially the case. And potentially at some point you will have to condense all the information to be able to create yourself the story or the brief summary for the decision making. So that's in a sense something that is key, because you can really start from a very technical angle to something that is very business driven. And that's where you need to understand what is your audience, from your teammates, as I said, to the highest level of decision, inside or outside the organization. And so at the end, how do we act on those results? And why do we act on those results? So the potential of data for all organizations is driven by, at the end, how it can help businesses. So that's why we always start with what is the business questions that you want to answer? What are the things that you want to optimize? And if you don't have these kind of questions, you don't ask yourself how it can help, you will do a lot of things, potentially a lot of very complex technical things, showing your expertise, but not helping the business. And that's what we discussed with the unicorn data scientist that was having a PhD at the beginning that we don't need anymore. So that's something that is very key around those elements as well. So you need to understand that, and you need to be sure that you are building for the business. So what are the things that we can leverage on, in a sense? It's not so much different from the IT or tech space overall, but we can definitely optimize processes, because if you have data, that is the data points along the process that you have, you can optimize a few things, and even like having automatic modeling. For example, if you are a bank and you ask information about your customer, but it's still your counselor in a sense that he is that's giving the permission for a loan or not, this person is leveraging his own information and data to do that, but potentially you can also change the process and have automatically a credit score that is created by a data analyst or a data scientist, someone that is there, that is working with the team to collect the information, to value that, and after that, to bring this information of, oh yeah, there is this credit score for this person, either directly to the customer, if you want to have this kind of process, or, for example, if you want to still have someone that is validating and discussing with a bigger project, often the case when you have like SMEs or larger organizations asking for loans, that's not small. you bring insights to these persons that will help the data-informed decision making. You can know better your customers. Of course, you can identify new business opportunities because you identify that there is a new product that is making sense. You can run some experiments, and you can also, of course, see a lot of elements on the risks that you have internally, because you can track what you are doing. But there are many more. As we said, we work on, I will say, almost anything we want when we talk about data these days. We live in the information age. So what is the most important is, what is the business question? Do we have the data to answer that? And how can we help to do that? And should we do that or not is something that sometimes we forget to ask. But sometimes there is no need to invest too much money and effort on doing something that is complex when you can have an easy way of doing it also. So the return of investment, ROI, is key on doing the project. You want to do something that is bringing you more profit than effort. That's the case for anything you do in life, more or less, or at least to be in balance. It's to change that. Yeah, the return on that is key. So we'll stop on that. And that means that we almost covered all the things that we want to have. Next time, we will have a small presentation, but more on a lab mindset, I will say. So that will be linked to, first, a few elements, extra elements on bringing a data culture, what are the main challenges of a data project, a few elements linked to the data quality, the data ethics, or the environmental footprint, a few elements like this that are, I will say, on the side, but also very important when we talk about data science. And after that, a key element that will be giving you a few elements more on the machine learning data science side, on why, in fact, we should talk about data science as well, because we are linked to the data modeling. But most importantly, to show you tools that are helping you to do that a bit more easily. So that's one thing that will be key. It will be a presentation of a tool and a practice on a tool that is very user-friendly for an end-to-end data science project. And that's one of the leading data science and machine learning platform, for example. And that's where you see that now the tools are helping you to do a lot of things, because they even choose for you the algorithms and so on. But that's the kind of things that we discuss next week very quickly before moving, in a sense, to the rest. That and all of that, of course, will be after the exam. So that's what is key. Next week we do the first exam on the data literacy, and we do this kind of lab on the data science and machine learning platform with a few elements that are more outside of the analytics skills, but more always to keep in mind what is important on the data science process. And the week after, we do the exam, this time on the knowledge side, and we start the projects. So that's where we will work on our end-to-end data science project together with, as I said, more lab plus project mindset. So do you have any questions on all the value chain that we have, a bit more on the data analytics skills that are linked to our data science and data literacy process? No questions? All right. So on our space, you will be able to find the activity 2. I put also the final evaluation information there. We will quickly split the time that we have between one that is a spreadsheet manipulation analysis, and after that, more the data visualizations on Data Studio. So that's already kind of element that we have. We'll see how far we can go on that. but that's really key information that we have to do. So we can adapt a bit the time, but that will be the elements that we are working on now. So yeah, for the exam, we can arrange that on seeing how we can do that outside of it and giving you the 1 hour, I will see during the session or outside the session, I will see on that, but we can find a way to do that again. If you missed one exam, normally it should be okay, but if you want to do it because you think that it's something that you want to have as we have 3 parts in a sense: the data literacy, the knowledge, and the project, that are more or less equal in terms of value. If you really think that it will balance your final score, I would say, yeah, we can do that, and you just have to send me an email to adapt on how we can do that. We just need to book an hour and see how we do that. So we can retrieve that on the project side. Anything else? All right. So don't forget to send me an email to validate your email addresses. That's one thing. And let's move to the activity 2. So normally you don't need me more than that. I will just share again the link in case you left it. Up and up. I lost my screen. Up. So the goal is really to not manipulate so much the data in a sense on what we did last time on enriching the information, formatting, and using, for example, spreadsheets as the data manipulation tool, and also on the way that things are evolving all the time recently, and I don't even know if you will have access to that. So I don't think I put the good link. Let me check. But anyway, so when you are having a formula, for example, here, and I will put a really random thing, that times that, I will just check here. Up. Let me check. I don't have it anymore here. Okay, so yesterday I had a menu where we can add automatically a new formula. So it will create on the metadata here, like this formula, and then it will be your specific sum or your specific ratio, or for example, creating the formula that is like the function for calculating final score in our case of like evaluation. That's something that was interesting. And I don't know why I don't have it here anymore, but anyway, that's where the tools are evolving and so on. So let me just check something. What I tell you there. Why there all of these ones? Let me just give me just a second. I think I didn't give you the good link. It's a copy of this one that is cleaner. But you should have up. Just change that. Because this one was the result more of the last week. I probably had the wrong one. Up here. Interesting. I think I have a bug on this side. Up, copy link. Okay, so let me just check again. I think it's a cache issue. What I had here. Yeah, okay. This one is cleaner with the same data. Huh? No worries. It's just like this. You have also like all the elements. So now the most important, and that's where you see that you're on the clean data set. So you have no more the columns at the end, and you have the district that we didn't have last time, and you have no more rows at the end. So you have the formulas and the kind of elements that we used last time as well. All right. So on your consolidated data that you can use directly here. So make sure that you're on this one. So you can just make a copy on your side to be able to make a copy. So at least you have that on your own drive, and you can start to play with more just two elements, a pivot table, a quick graph as well. So like this, you represent both. And very quickly, you need to do this 4 analysis. So all the time, so you have on the analysis, 2 elements, the descriptions and the analysis, and you need to have the pivot table and the graph all the time. So always 2 elements. That's that. So you can have the description based on the pivot table first, of course. After that, you can also enrich it with what you see on the graph. And the most important is that you have 4 new sheets at the end of the process that will be there. So if I'm doing it quickly, just to not lose too much time on that. So I'm doing a pivot table for the first analysis. For example, the first analysis is total revenue by product. So I can rename it, for example, total revenue by product. Tag. And here I can create my, I won't do that anyway, because like this you don't have up, but like I do another things, another analysis, just so you don't just copy paste. Like this, here I have my information by customer, for example, and I could have just the sum of revenue by customer. If I want to just have that, I could also use this data here, for example, to insert a new graph, a new chart. And now, so I should have both my revenue by pivot table and my information by loyal ID. Doesn't make sense for me to have that like this. No, because my loyal ID is like an identifier. So my goal is more to have something that is composition, and I could have, so what I was saying, for example, on the 3D side, you see that here, those ones seems bigger than those ones. So that's normally something that we don't do. Yeah, just make sure that you have all the information, the ladders and the axes that are there, the legend potentially as well, depending on how you present the graph. But yeah, that's the kind of elements that you have to do. And after that, on your sheet, wherever you are doing it, you can write your analysis here, and you take all your information and you just add it, for example. And of course, your analysis is bigger than that, but that's more or less what you can do. And I gave you exactly the 4 analyses to do. So the most important is to do that all together on the right elements. Any questions? So what I propose to you is that normally this one should be faster. So we can take, we have 4 analyses. I just shown you how to do that again, so we should be quick. what I propose to you, you can take like a 5-minute break right now. We do intensely after that. For analysis, should be able to do that in 25 minutes. As I've shown you. So yeah, we'll do that. 5-minute break right now. We start it, and like this, we can start to work being clear. We do the 4 analysis here. We look at that quickly, and after that, we take like around an hour to work on the data visualization on the Data Studio side. We will work again on Data Studio and so on. So it's not so important. So we will focus on that. The most important will be to be clear on why you are doing things, and we'll see if we do that on Google Sheets or Data Studio based on the first exercise. So we will adapt just on that. So no problem. 5-minute breaks anyway. And so like this, we focus after. All right, so what we will do up, it's 25 minutes for the 4 analysis. Normally the manipulation is quick, so you have just to do the pivot table. After that, you adapt on the graph side. That's pretty easy to do that. You just adapt and make sure that you have all the information that are there, the title and so on. You put one analysis by sheet on the document that you have in your copy, and you write more the descriptions and the analysis. We'll do a quick review of them, and the most important is that you will be able also to see what others have been doing, to learn from them, and to adapt, to grow, and to give feedback as well. So it's something that is key on how we grow together as well. So you add after that, and you can start to do that now. You share the documents properly. You put again the process, make sure that you use that, and you make sure that everyone can access the link, at least to view or comments potentially. But like, make sure that you can access. An easy way to do that, to validate that you can access, is like try to open the same link that you copied in incognito or private session in your in your browser. And so the navigation is key like this. If you leave your UP access and you just put another kind of session, you will see what kind of visitors can see as well. So that's something that is important to be able to do these kind of elements. Because the day of the exam, for example, if you are not able to share these kind of elements or into projects, you will lose a lot of time and potentially a lot of value in what you do. So for analysis, pivot table plus graph, I let you do that right now, 25 minutes. We stop at 4, and so like this, we have like around an hour to move on the rest, and we'll see if we focus on Google Sheet or Data Studio based on the elements, or maybe a mix of two, but in different ways, based on what you have been able to do on this exercise. Any questions? So if no questions, what I ask you to do now is to add directly the link of your document here. So like this, it's done, and we can have a look as well progressively. Okay. So make sure that you add your Google Sheets link here. Right. So, are you facing any problems? What could be the blocking points and so on? You should be able to have finished already. It has been 25 minutes overall. So, yeah. Did you have any problems? And if you didn't finish, what could be the reason?
Excuse me, teacher. I don't hear what you say at the moment.
So did you face any issue to realize that? Like,
You
it's
mean
very important
for
question because, like,
for
normally you should have finished the activity. So that means that if you don't say anything next week, you will have a lot of troubles during the exam. Because if you're not able to run this analysis next week, you will have like 0 at the exam. Let's be clear. And I have no issue to give a 0 to someone that is not doing anything and that is not asking questions before. So that's why my question is here. So did you have any issue to finish this activity 2? That is this one. So normally you should have finished the activity 2. That was basically 4 analysis to realize, a pivot table plus a graph. That is helping to have that. And after that, you have to put the description and the analysis below the graph, as I shared. So you should have the pivot table, the graph, and after that, the analysis. If you just build, for example, a graph, basically you will have 2 in 20. So you have 20% maximum of the answers here, and 10 will be probably the most of what you have. So if I'm looking, when I took like files randomly, so here we have the graphs that are well done, but we have no analysis. It's not what I call an analysis or an interpretation. There is no interpretation, no analysis. If I'm taking another file, here we have a few elements. It's not finished yet. And we have no analysis. Here we have a first one, an analysis. And I don't care who is doing what. It's not a judgment. It's not here. It's not for an evaluation. But if I'm asking you, have you finished and did you have any trouble to do that? And you say nothing, we can just move on and good luck for next week and for the rest.
Hello, sir. I think I don't have for this time. I don't have time to write the analysis yet. I just finished the graph and the pivot table.
Mm-hmm. What is taking you time? Just to understand.
Like for me, like for the example, on the last question about the standard number of transactions per day of the week, actually, I was thinking whether I need to group the quantity of the quantity of it by each day or not. So it's like kind of like confusing for me, and need to think about the question and need to think about how do I make it. That's how.
Yeah, it's always good to think about the question. It's even key, because if you don't understand what's asked, in a sense, or what you need to present at the end, you're for sure on the wrong pathway. So let's take this one. So if we are asking for the standard deviation, first, what is the standard deviation? Standard deviation is what is helping us to analyze, in a sense, the fluctuation here of the number of transactions per day. That means that we want to see if it's the same number of transactions every day or if it is changing, basically. And we want to use the indicator that is that is that the standard deviation, doing exactly this kind of things. So first, you should be able to explain what I just said, because if you're not able to explain that, that means that you don't understand what's the standard deviation and what we are aiming at. So we are here to have the variation by day. So if I'm doing my pivot table, what I want first, it's my day. What is my day in my data? I can go back and check on that. So my day is my date. So I want to analyze the date. Okay. And what I want to check is the number of transactions. What is my number of transactions? Here, in fact, I have to understand that on my database, each line is a transaction between a customer and a product. And we have a raw assumption that is like, in fact, every time someone is buying only one item and one quantity, which is a very basic one. So that means that here I can just count by day. And if I had no variation, so I can do that, and I could use dates, for example, to count some of the values. I want to count. If I had no variation at all, I would have always the same value. Okay. So now, if I'm putting the standard deviation, here I have 0. Why? Do you have an idea? And is it what was blocking you?
So is it how it does? So it's not about maybe I can choose with the quantity, because I was thinking that one transaction. Oh yeah, one transaction, because some transaction there are two quantity of order. Yeah, I confused with this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay.
So
yeah.
what is here? Of course, if I'm looking by date on that, I will have no variation, because it's not like that I'm looking at. That's exactly the kind of curiosity that I want and that you need. Of course, I'm wrong if I'm putting the date. What I need to have here, it's like potentially the sum of quantity, because that's what I want to aggregate. But what I want mostly, it's not so much that. But I have different things, so I want to check if there is a standard deviation that is existing, and that's what I'm looking at. It's that. And here I have my information that is here. Doesn't mean that it's easy to interpret, okay? But what I can say is that here, if I'm looking at that, it's difficult for me to analyze. But if I have a graph of this kind of elements, because I have quite a few of information, but even like here, I can see that I have more or less the same value. So if I'm inserting a graph, basically, I can see that my value is having small variation day by day, but more or less, it's always a small amount. Because if we look at that, it's a question of half-1. That is the difference. So the quantity is more or less the same over time. How can we check that and go further? We can have the quantity, and that's where you have to play with the things. We have the quantity, and if we look like on the sum by day, okay, we have a small difference, but it's not that big. And so even more, if we look at the average quantity by transaction, it's always small amounts. So of course our variations are small because we are working with small numbers. And this one is the worst to analyze, of course, because that's the most complicated to understand. But all the other ones were easier. So if you are, so just maybe something in terms of process, instead of building the 4 visualizations and after doing the analysis for each, I would recommend you definitely to do one completely each time. So it's here. So if I'm looking at the total revenue over the period, that's easier to do that. All the first ones are easy to do. And when we ask you to do the analysis, you should done first one, second one, and third one. It's easier, particularly in an exam. Otherwise, you have just been doing like a very small part of it. Okay.
Okay, sir. And one more, I have another question. How do I sort the pivot table?
So a pivot table, you can always sort it here. So you are having the information, but based on the rows that you have here, now you see you have like 2 more values that are here. So if I'm removing the quantity, for example, the average quantity, I will have just 2 more here. But I can sort by dates, or I can sort by my value, for example. I'm looking at it. So here I have now the minimum here and the maximum here. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I could be ascending or descending. So the sort is not super advanced on this kind of elements. But if I want to have the dates up and to have that more the recent one at the beginning, I would have it here. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's not the, the most intuitive one, I agree. Okay, so who can share on the first analysis? And yeah, so I listened to you on the quantity side, but like, me come back. So the standard deviation of the number of transactions per day of the week. So I'm going back to my tricky side. So what I want to know here, it was asked to have a double kind of elements. That's why, sorry for that. So I'm going back to my number of transactions. So my number of transactions is this one. Okay, that's the number of transactions I had over time. Now what I'm asking for you, and you see that the graph didn't update on the main, by the way. I will remove it just quickly. So now I have my number of days. So what I want is the standard deviation up of those values. I'm sorry, I jumped on it because I followed you. So that's the value that we are looking for. That's the standard deviation of the number of days, the number of transactions by days. So this table is helping me to create the number of transactions by day. Okay. And after that, what I want is to understand that. Because here, what I could have, for example, is based on this number. So I did this aggregation I did, having the average as well. So I could have the average of my data that is here. So my average is, I have like in average by day 8.5. So we could around, you can say either between 8 and 9, or say directly 9 if you summarize. Depends on which level you're looking at and which position you're looking at. And it's evolving over time a bit, but it's more or less equal in a sense, because you always have something that is between 6 and 10 overall in average. That's what it means. They have a 2.6 difference. So is it a big difference or not? Not so big, in our opinion, for example, here. So that's what it helps to you. So having the minimum, the maximum, and so on can help you as well. But you can decide on how you want to present your information. So here, if you do your graph and your analysis, you have what you see over time. We don't like so much a bar like this. You could have a line chart, it's okay. But overall, it's more something like this that is relevant. Where you see that, it's a good way to see that over time. But otherwise, if you wanted, as you asked, for example, on the sort before, if you want to sort that more by the big to the small one, do we have more or less the same? Yeah, you see that like you have not so much like extreme values. So yeah, it's kind of a few values in between, and after that, it's like always between 4 and 14, and definitely the values are mostly between 6 and 10, because like you can see that the average is 8.5, and you have the standard deviation that is 2.5. So that's what you can say. I have not a big difference over time in my values. Okay. So what's like, what could be the analysis of someone for this one? So the total revenue by products. Who want to share about it?
Can I try, sir?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So should I share my
If
screen?
you want,
or
I can
no need?
share. Well, I can share your.
Yes.
I can share yours.
C7
I
on the
opened it, but it will get. Yeah, that was done.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. But I haven't got it yet.
That's. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
haven't- Okay. So for my analysis, so there are total of 11 products in this cafe example, and among those we have the total revenue for all the overall product is 2,289.5 USD for the whole product of sale, for the whole revenue. And what I can see is the most product that is sell is affogato, followed by lemonade. And the least product that we can get the total revenue is the fruit one. We get the least one. Yeah, that's all what I can say.
And in your opinion, why do you think that fruit is the less?
I think it's probably because of in here the data is from the coffee shop. So I think most of the people who go there may interested in the cafe more. So as we can see here, the cafe, most of cafe can sell a lot higher than the fruit one. Even the cookie also it's not very popular.
Okay. So something that is hidden and that you are forgetting, in a sense, to go further on the analysis, is that the revenue is linked to the price and the quantity. So that's something that could be interesting to look at. But basically, otherwise, on your interpretation, it's good overall. The only thing that is a bit tricky, potentially, could be, instead of having, and I will do that on the other side, instead of having a graph like this, what we could look at is a bit more how it's distributed, and so what is the proportion of each product. So if I have a product, so here I will put the name because it's better, but I could have put the ID. And I want so the sum of the revenue, so the total revenue by product, that's the value. Oops, sorry, I put that in column. In values. So here I have the sum of revenue by product. Now, if I want to analyze that, I could look at that like this, but also what I could do, we'll do that with the pivot table as well, just to show you. So here, instead of just the sum, I will put like the percentage of the grand total, for example. And here, automatically, I have the one that are, in a sense, that's the share in my revenue. Okay, so I can say that, for example, instead of just having the bars as you had and the total revenue, which is interesting, I could also enrich that and say that, oh, when the fruits, I'm saying that it's what is bringing the less. Yes, it's bringing only $48 on my period, and it's 2% of my revenue. You have to be clear on the units and so on, but like, that's it. Okay, so like this, you can even enrich already the information. And so on a graph, if I'm looking on a graph, just having the bars as you did might not be the most interesting. I could have gone most for a graph that is up the proportion. And so for that, instead of that, I will go potentially for this one. Or I will have put like the proportion here like this as a stack bar as well. I could have done that. So I could have created this one and I could stack, for example, to 100%. I did a combo chart. So that, depending on how I did it, yeah, because okay, it's not what I wanted to do. Let me finish first my first graph. I will do that after. So here you will have something that is a bit more interesting for us, because what we have when you look at the data here is like the percentage of each in my total revenue. So I have my total revenue, and in my total revenue, I know that Affogato is 40%. So that's something that is maybe interesting, or I could have both. That's where having the total revenue plus here the proportion is making a lot of sense, and I can decide on which proportion is making the most sense on depending on what I want to say. And here you see the advantage is that on the graph I have both. So one graph could that is like this could help me to have both answered. Okay. So that's mostly on the graph. Now what I said to you is also that, now we'll move to that. We don't care about the stack bar, just the way to represent. Anyway, so what we also said is that the revenue is based on the quantity and the price. Okay? So if I'm not having the sum of the price, but the average of the price, and if the price is always the same, it means the unique price. And here's the quantity, so the total quantity. What I see as well is that at the end, I'm not selling so much less fruit than Affogato. Because what I'm selling the less, it's the juice. This one is in between. So compared to the Affogato, for example, what is making the big difference is like the fruit price is 1, the Affogato is 6. So in terms of revenue, I'm having that. So what could be at the end something that is interesting is the margin. So here I could create a new indicator at the end that is helping me to have the margin. And that will help me to understand what I'm making the most between my revenue and my cost. But if I'm looking just at the revenue, your interpretation is correct. Now I took this example particularly to show you how far you can go in an analysis. Is anything not clear on what I just said? And in the process that you see that you, in a sense, over time, should progressively adopt as someone that is analyzing a graph. So if I'm asking you first just for the analysis of the revenue, which is the same, which is what is there, analyze and describe the total revenue by product over the period. So that was correct, what you said. The total revenue was this one, and we could have represented like this. So like this, we could have stayed on like the total revenue is this one, and 14% of it is linked to Affogato, and very few from the fruit. That's your analysis. So you can see that Affogato is something that is important. If you want to go further on the why and how do you explain these kind of things, that's where you have these elements that are interesting. So any questions linked to that?
To me, no question, but interesting that we can ask for more, like about the price, like why it's the less.
You will see that data literacy and data science at the end is that it's curiosity and being able to play with the tools to answer the question that I want. So the most important in the mindset more than the tool to be a good analyst at the end, because you will have a mindset that will help you to manipulate the tools as you want to answer your questions. And you will bring a tremendous value to the people that you are working with by doing so. So that's moving from the technical creator of a tool. So if you create a dashboard to someone, it's a task that is different. You create a visual or a tool that is with a filter and so on for this person to do the analysis. But if you are the one doing the analysis, the more you move close to the business, in a sense, the more this kind of mindset and curiosity is important. And you could have built an AI model giving me, for example, what will be my revenue on the next period. I don't care if it was difficult or not. If I'm an analyst, I have this number, I have this value, and I want to use it in my analysis. So that's where the team is working together, because if you're working on something that is very complex, you will have a team, full team that will work on this kind of model and this data pipeline, helping you to always have a good forecast, because you need this forecast potentially to adapt. But you see, you're going back to the business side, and that's where you need a team that is combining different skills. So you just have to be aware of what you want to do personally, and how you can help businesses, and what kind of skills you need to work on to move forward. So do we have any other questions? If we don't have any other questions, I won't do much of the other analysis that are there, but we will do the same things, and we will start with that, and we will stay on Google Sheets. So like this, we don't bring another tool. It's not a problem. But we will change the approach. So the goal this time is not so much to follow what I'm saying. The goal is for you to pick something that you want to analyze, so an analysis that you want to build because you think it will bring value to the business. And that's exactly the other approach. And after that, you have to realize it. So you can also have like the pivot table or any intermediary steps, but the most important is the visualization and the analysis. So 3 visualizations to realize. Do one by one. So do one and be very clear on the goal of the visualization. So why do you want to analyze that? What do you expect to know, even if you don't know it yet? What are the variables that you're analyzing? What kind of graphs are relevant to that? So that's really the mindset that you should adopt linked to that. do I need to even, like, for example, create a pivot table that is, I will say, intermediary to having my result? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the most important is the visual at the end. But we see that here it's a bit further on the things and just clearly more for yourself. I will answer those questions directly now, so we won't go for that today, that we discussed it already. The main difference between a report and a dashboard, a report is when you have a tool like Data Studio, but you give like a report and no one is playing with filters and the data to go further on the analysis. So it's a kind of static report more all the time. You can have a few dynamic things, but mostly static. On the dashboard side, it's the opposite. You're super interactive and you give the data and the tool, in fact, to help the analysis of someone. So that's something that is very important. You don't give them just raw reports. You give them something that they can play with, so like this they can understand further. They can deep dive on the subpopulation. They can go on combining elements and so on and see a few information that they will not have access to that. So Data Studio at the end is a tool that is helping to do data exploration because you can visualize and do a few different elements. You can do reports, you can do dashboards. So it's something that is very interesting when you play with these kind of tools in the business intelligence side. And you can incorporate at the end some indicators that are coming from the predictive side or even the prescriptive side. So it's more incorporating the full value chain in something at the end. And so that's why you have to be clear on, is it a data exploration or an analysis overall, a report or a dashboard that you build with this kind of tools? And that's what you will have to keep in mind, because Data Studio and Google Sheet are not so different. The main difference is that Data Studio is reading kind of database. So that's why it will be clean. It should be a clear table or even a combination, a join of tables that you should read from a database, but also from a Google Sheet, for example. When you are playing with a Google Sheet, you see you can do whatever you want anywhere. It's like really a spreadsheet that you can put information wherever you want. If you want to play that in a very kind of dashboard side, you could create somewhere things that people cannot touch and have this kind of information every time that the value is changing. You can have filters. We saw that last time with the slicers and so on. So people can play with information as well. If you wanted to do that, it's possible, but very few, I would say few people are building at the end dashboards with this kind of tools. It's more like an analysis tool that is used a lot because it's very, very flexible. So it's generic and you can do a lot of things there. So that was more to answer the questions that we won't go for. So I let you, and we will do that for the next 30 minutes. So I let you do one by one the analysis, go as far as you can. If you do one, you do one. If you do three, you do three. But like, be clear on what you are doing. So pick based on the data that there is here. Put yourself in the business mindset. Create potentially the pivot tables and at the end, create a visual and analyze and share your analysis to the owner. So that's very important that you're able to present that. And without all the manipulation before, but this kind of part on being able to analyze and share that to the person that is your audience is part of the exam next week. Straightforward. As capacity to read, manipulate, and the manipulation for us will be mostly, as we said, on the website tool, but you will have this few little manipulation. And after that, you will move on the capacity to interpret, analyze, and share the results. So be very clear and concise, create a good visual, leverage the indicators that you're creating, but you should create a summary, a presentation for, in a sense, for the business owner that is very clear and that anyone can understand in easy words. So you can have the
The Voice Kids Cambodia ឧបត្ថម្ភផ្ដាច់មុខដោយរថយន្ត
Yes. So in the activity 3, are we going to create the visualization in the Google Spreadsheet, or we need to use the Google Data Studio?
No, so we stay on the Google Sheet. That's what I just I just changed. So we stay on this
Okay, thank you.
one. But thanks for the question.
Do you mean the activity 3 is not today, teacher?
No, the activity 3 is for today, but we just do the Google Sheet site. So you create that only on the Google project. So we are still on the same data, but now you have to ask those questions and to create the right visual and analysis for the business owner. So we don't give you anymore the what do you have to calculate. You have to ask yourself, what do I want to prove to the person? So that's what we are doing for the 30 minutes coming. We don't care about Data Studio for today.
Nếu mà nó xâm đôi yon không nhớ mà có một ấy đồ mẹ Cambodia ឧបត្ថម្ភផ្ដាច់មុខដោយរថយន្ត Mazda nó xâm đôi yon không nhớ mà có một ấy đồ mẹ This Voice Kids Cambodia The Voice Kids Cambodia ឧបត្ថម្ភ
នៅក្នុងពេលនេះវគ្គ The Blind Audition នឹងបន្តជាមួយកុមារីមួយរូបមកពីរាជធានីភ្នំពេញ មានអាយុ10ឆ្នាំនាងត្រូវបានក្រុមគ្រួសារនាងលើកទឹកចិត្តនិងជំរុញយ៉ាងខ្លាំងសម្រាប់ការប្រឡងប្រជែងមួយនេះ
បងប្អូនទាំងគ្នាខ្ញុំឈ្មោះកនសវណ្ណបញ្ញាទី4ខ1ខ្ញុំមានបងប្អូន3នាក់ស្រី2ប្រុស1ខ្ញុំជាកូនទី2ប៉ាខ្ញុំបង្កប់ពុករបរយោធាម៉ាក់ខ្ញុំជាស្ត្រីមេផ្ទះ
ចាបញ្ញាមិនដែរ
អ្នករហ័សសប្បាយចិត្ត
សប្បាយចិត្តមែនតើត្រៀមខ្លួនហើយនៅ
ហើយ
ហើយចុះម៉ាមីត្រៀមខ្លួនហើយនៅហើយក្មួយហើយមីងអូនហើយដូចគ្នាថ្ងៃនេះលក្ខណៈជាគ្រួសារហ្មងណា
ចាខ្ញុំអូសនៅ Facebook ឃើញគេបង្ហោះជាងរបយ Kid Cambodia ខ្ញុំក៏សុំប៉ាខ្ញុំចង់ប្រឡងរបយ Kid Cambodia ថាកូនឯងចង់ប្រឡងមែនខ្ញុំថាចង់ប្រឡងប៉ាថាប្រឡងទៅចាំប៉ាទិញពាក្យឲ្យនៅផ្ទះចឹងខ្ញុំទៅនេច្រៀងឲ្យគាត់ស្ដាប់ចឹងបានគាត់ថាសលេងកូនឯងព្រោះហើយចឹងបានប៉ាឲ្យកូនឯងទៅប្រឡងទៅ
ហើយម៉ាក់យល់ឃើញថាមិនដែរទៅចំពោះកម្មវិធីនេះ
ខ្ញុំយល់ថាកូនស្រីខ្ញុំគាត់ចង់ណាស់អើយខ្ញុំថាដើម្បីចិត្តកូនណាចាព្រោះកូនខ្ញុំក្លាហានចាគុកចែងគ្នាចឹងចា
ខ្ញុំសូមអរគុណដល់ប៉ាម៉ាក់ដែលលើកទឹកចិត្តខ្ញុំបានមកដល់វគ្គនេះខ្ញុំជាប់ដល់វគ្គ Blind Audition ហើយអរគុណដែលគាត់ចិញ្ចឹមថែរក្សាខ្ញុំគាត់តែងតែលើកទឹកចិត្តខ្ញុំរហូតមកដល់វគ្គនេះ
ត្រៀមខ្លួនហើយ1 2 3យេចាញ់ដំណើរតាចា
នៅក្នុងថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំនឹងតាំងចិត្តថានឹងយកប៊ូតុង3ឲ្យគាត់ឲ្យបាន
យកអីពីក្រោយបានដើម្បីបន្តទៅវគ្គក្រោយទៀតស៊ូអូខេនេះបាទមីក្រូណោះសំណាងណាគេសំណាងល្អណាប្រឹងប្រែងណាមួយណាអេ
ចង់ជីងម៉ូតូវិញអង្គឲ្យស្វែងរកផ្លូវនៅឯណាទៅផ្លូវអើយផ្លូវទៅផ្ទះម៉ែក្មេងនៅឆ្ងាយឬឈិនគៀកជើងបងឬជាប់ជើងមេអាកុំឆែកតាមមែបក៏នៅតែអត់ឃើញលើសងផ្លូវទៅសាលាផ្លូវវត្តផ្លូវសាខ្ញុំស្គាល់ឡើងសុំឌឿងហែមពីកស្គនក៏លិកឡអង្គតត្រង់ណាបតែផ្លូវទៅផ្ទះម៉ែក្មេងណែណាឬក៏អ្នកណាយកផ្លូវនោះលែទុកបាត់ហើយបាយវត្តបាយស្ទើបាយទាំងបាយសាឡាខ្ញុំហូបអាយុជាង30ថ្លៃប៉ុន្តែនៅឡើយហូបបាត់តែម៉ែក្មេងរសជាតិយ៉ាងណាឆောင်းដឹងប៉ុន្តែស្នេហ៍ម៉ែមួយជាថ្ងៃរកថែធ្វើអីមិនស្រួលព្រោះចេះវាយអត់បានទេរំពងនៅក្រមុំនោះដាក់ស្លឹកឆេងម៉ែបងកើតម៉ែក្មេងសិនតែបងប្អូនជីដូនមួយថ្លា
បាយវត្តបាយផ្សារបាយទាំងនៅសាលាខ្ញុំអស់ហើយអាយុជាង30ថ្លៃប៉ុន្តែនៅឡើយហូបបាយផ្ទះម៉ែក្មេងជាតិយ៉ាងណាចង់ដឹងពុតពេនសម្លបាយម៉ែក្មេងតើសាបឬមួយកងប្រៃតែគុំយូរទៅមានម៉ែតែមួយជេយកជេថ្ងៃរកតែធ្វើអីមិនស្រួលព្រោះចេះវាយអត់បានទេព្រមព្រំនៅក្រមុំនោះដាក់ស្លឹកឆេងមិនបង្កើតម៉ែក្មេងសិនតែបងប្អូនជីដូនមួយថ្លា
chín kia trường mong ai đi chóp trên mình ta không thấy nam em còn đi tại on tình người sông ngày ngày xa lắm lấy mắt lấy xa cũng xóa làng sông đi khen tiếng con sport tôi đi con lo ông lo tóc na và tại phường tứ tiếngไม่เป็นแน่นาหรือก็เนี่ยนายกเลยดูแลตกบ้านอายใบหมดไม้สตาร์ใบเตียงใบสลากยุ่งโคกออกเฮยอายุเชียนสามทลายปนใต้เหนื่อยหลายหูมัดยามไม่กันเมงดูชิดอย่างนาช่างต้องลงเป็นสำหรับใบไม่มีหน้าสากอันมวยก็ไปแต่กันอยู่ใต้เมียนมาแต่มวยเชยกเชทั้งไงร้องแทนทั่วไอ้มันสนุกทุกเจไม่เองซาใบเตียงใบสลากยุคโอบอังไออายุเชียงสามทลายปนใต้เหนื่อยหลายหูมัดยามไม่กันเมงสุดอย่างนาจ้องดังบนเป็นสำล้อไม้ไม่เมงตาสาบหรือมวยก็ไรแต่กันอยู่ใต้เวียนมาแต่มวยเชยยกเจทั้งไงร้องไห้ทั่วไอ้มันสนุกรู้เจไว้อดมาเด้งแต่ไม่กระมุงน้องตาสนุกเชงแม่บอกได้ไม่เมงเส้นแต่มองคนที่โดนมวยลา
ឈ្មោះអីអាយុប៉ុន្មានផ្ទះនៅឯណានៅខេត្តណាផ្ទះលេខប៉ុន្មានផ្លូវលេខប៉ុន្មានភូមិអីឃុំអីអញ្ចឹង
ឈ្មោះកងសវណ្ណបញ្ញាអាយុ10ឆ្នាំនៅភ្នំពេញ
អ្នកភ្នំពេញបញ្ញាមូលហេតុអីបានសម្រេចចិត្តឡើងមកក្នុងកម្មវិធីនេះតើមានអ្នកណាដែលជំរុញចិត្តឬក៏ខ្លួនឯង
ម៉ាក់បងប្អូនជំរុញមកទាំងអស់ហ្មង
អញ្ចឹងនេះរង្វាន់ដល់ការនេះច្រើនណាស់ណា
ចា
ដឹងទេ
ខ្ញុំដឹង
ហ្នឹងហ៎
ចា
ចុះបើសិនជាបញ្ញាឈ្នះបានរង្វាន់ច្រើនណាគិតធ្វើអីខ្លះ
យកទៅទិញផ្ទះឲ្យចែកបងប្អូន
ចុះបងប្អូនច្រើនយ៉ាងហ្នឹងចែកអស់ដែរហ៎
អត់យកខ្លួនឯង
តែចែកចុះមួយបងប្អូនយើងច្រើនណាស់ណា
ចា
ចែកទៅអស់លុយហ្នឹងហ្មង
ហ្នឹងហើយ
ហើយចុះឡាន
ឡានទៅខ្លួនឯង
អូឡានទៅខ្លួនឯង
អីបើសិនគាត់ចែកម្នាក់ម្លាយើងខូចម្នាក់ម្លាដែរ
បានយ៉ាងឡានដែរ
ម្លា
ហើយបញ្ញា
ចា
ចេះច្រៀងអាយុប៉ុន្មាន
អាយុ7ឆ្នាំ
អញ្ចឹងឥឡូវមកដល់ឥឡូវ3ឆ្នាំហើយមែនទេ
ចា
អ្នកណាបង្រៀនច្រៀង
ចេះច្រៀងខ្លួនឯង
ចេះខ្លួនឯងតែម្ដ
ចា
ងក្រុមគ្រួសារអត់មានអ្នកណាចេះច្រៀងទេ
ចេះតា
អញ្ចឹងហើយពេលដែលបញ្ញាច្រៀងទៅពួកគាត់ថាម៉េច
អូទៅថាបរោះ
ពួកគាត់ចូលចិត្ត
ចា
So do you have difficulties to realize the visualization overall? Or say differently, is someone already having one that is able to share? Really explaining why and explaining a bit more about the data and so on, and so being aware on what graphs you tested and why, and having the analysis.
Hey, I'm Joey, and I'm one of the 38. You listen to this video and
Stabilizer effect in DaVinci Resolve. Let's hop in there. Yeah, that background noise is pretty distracting. So we'll use the noise reduction effect and test out 2 different ways mixer panel effect. With them is more advanced, time-consuming, and the quicker way of reducing background noise that I'm going to show you does a pretty awesome job. So when this button's red, that means the effect is active. We'll be turning it on and off a few
Hello, sir.
Yep.
Okay, can I share my screen? And I will...
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So for me, because I have two things to be analyzed. So one is I want to know the goal is I want to know which district or which region that can get the most revenue. So the goal is that to know if, for example, like if the place that is get the least revenue, so I can run a promotion or something like that. So as for what I have seen here, you can see that the West have around 60% of the whole revenue, while the North is only get 10% of the whole revenue. So my suggestion is that the shop can shift some staff from North to the West if the West branch is have staff which is like the same amount of staff, for example, something like this. And the other suggestion is to give the promotion to the North branch, probably because of the North people don't know about the shop, so that's why we get the least revenue. Yeah, something like this. And that is my first one. And my second one, I want to know what is the popular, sorry, not population, but popular item in each region. So for now, I am still doing it, but my idea is that maybe we can similar thing. We can run a promotion. For example, if we see here for cappuccino, if we compare to the North, the same North, we can see that cappuccino is very a little amount of people who buy cappuccino, who order cappuccino. So maybe we can do some promotion or give some discount to people who buy it.
Yeah, no, that's very clear, and the visual are good as well. Potentially to see a bit more the popular products here. If you really want to see, I would say by region, I will have reverse it. I will have like the four regions being the four bars, and having all the products being more the same. So I will just invert the value, and what I will have done is to stack to 100%. So like this, I will analyze, in fact, really the ratio and the comparison to 100%. So in the four, what are the percentage of quantity that I'm having? So like this, it will be even faster. I can check if I have access to your file in edit.
Actually, my original plan was to do that, but I don't know how to do it. I mean, I tried to reverse the district and the item name, but for somehow it doesn't work. So this way is work for me. So I did this.
No problem. Can you just change for the? It should be. Is it your file? It's not your file. Let me check.
I will unshare.
Up. It's there. If so, if you just change on the way you share the link to edit, just for a minute, so like this, I can show you.
Okay.
Directly in your file. So on the share, you click on share, and you can edit. So like this.
Your email, your UP email. Right?
No. So just on the share, when you click on share,
okay.
Here you have after that like.
Okay.
Normally, the value of the link. Yeah. You see.
Okay.
Here instead of comments, you can have
you may refresh.
even faster. Perfect. So here on your graph, if you invert it, it should be okay. Switch row and columns. Here it is. And after that, instead of just stacked on standard, what I will have is stacked 100%. And so like this, you see the profile. And you see that you can, after that, also sort in different ways. But for example, you see that at Fogato, you don't have a lot on the south. Here, the big one is the cake that you have a lot on the south compared to the others. So that's the kind of analysis that are helping a lot. And particularly if you sort it by, in a sense, product first, it will do that. And you could have done that in the pivot table as well, to have the percentage by region. So if you want to show that, for example, on the pivot table, instead of having the sum of the quantity as default, you can have the percentage of row. And for each row, it will do that as well. So it will give you the percentage. And at the end, that means that for this district, I have the values. And so you can have that like this. And you could sort, and it will not change by the... But it's okay, it won't change a lot. But because you have a lot of values that you could order by the biggest ones overall based on the total. That could be that on some quantity. Like this, it's a bit clearer, but that's not changing a lot. Descending. So this you have at the beginning the first one that is the lemonade overall. That is the biggest quantity. And after that, So that's a way to do that. And maybe one thing to finish on that, there is one mistake that you have been doing, is that the district is not the district of the branch. If you have, and it's not explained fully, so it's not a problem. If you look at the data, where the district is coming from, the district is coming from the loyalty. So I'm looking for this loyalty ID in the loyalty database, and the loyalty, in fact, it's a list of customer. So it's saying, so we have two options. As it's not said, you could say that, but what I said last time was that it's where the person is coming from, not so much where he's buying. So if we say that clearly, here it's not the case. It's not said fully clearly, so it's not a problem. It's a small mistake. It's a small mistake compared to what I said before. It's not a problem that you didn't remember. Here you take the assumption that you know that the district that you have in the customer database, it's where he's shopping, not where he's based. So it's not a problem to have that. It just has to be clear that you see it's going back to the where is the data coming from, and am I clear on the data that I have? Here, potentially, you have something that you are not sure about, and that's where you could ask the business in a real project to clarify. But otherwise, no, there is no problem. It's very good. You just to go further and to go to the next steps. But I'm adding all those comments. Any questions?
So this data is mean that it's only one coffee shop. It's not from the different coffee shop.
So yeah. But it was not clear. So potentially you could have taken this assumption, particularly starting just with this data, not saying that it's going to the customer. So we don't know if it's like a district on like a shop by district, or if it's where the customer is based. And it's not so much a mistake due to you, it's a mistake because there is an uncertainty that has not been clarified.
Yeah,
Which
okay,
is
yeah,
not no problem. You just took an assumption that is at the end very good, and it's based on that. After that, your analysis is very good.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Do we have any other questions or people that want to try? No? Okay, so we will stop here. You see that we have different tools and so on. At the end, what we care for the moment is more your capacity to manipulate a bit the information, and we focused on one tool mostly. To be able to interpret and do a few creation by yourself. And again, so to finish on that, to help you a bit up, I will share again the screen. Resume presenting. So if I'm coming back to it, so we can close that. Up. So for example, that was all the example that we had last time. Going back to that. So we won't ask you to create so many things. You can, if you want, export the data and manipulate and create some indicators and so on. But what we ask for next time is more for you to understand, based on this information that we have here, what is happening here. So if we go back to the context and the data, we need to understand that we have data from 1984 to 2021 for Cambodia, for this disease that is represented here on percentage of children that are 12 to 23 months old. And we are looking at the immunization on that thing. So that's something that is important to understand, and we have the details that are here. We have a lot of different information that are there, but the most important is to understand the first part. Now, if I wanted to go further on an analysis, and it's what will be asked at some point, you could compare that, for example, to the aggregates that there is. That means that Cambodia, at the end, for them, it's considered for the East Asian Pacific, of course, and also on the lower middle income. That's the category that they have. So you can compare Cambodia to that. You can also add yourself another region. So if I want to have the world indicator, we can. If we want to have something that is closer, that is Vietnam, for example, we can. And so now we can compare. And if we want to remove the world, we can. And if we want to compare that to another, for example, or to add information with another indicator, we can. Here we can have a look here. We changed fully and we are looking for another graph. Or if I'm going back, because it's all based on the URL, so if I'm going to the previous page, I can add, for example, this one. That is the immunization here, and I will be able normally to have two indicators. Well, maybe not on this one, but I can have the other indicator that is here, and I can compare again both. So like this, I can see. And interestingly, Vietnam is below on this one compared to the other one where Cambodia was higher. So that's the kind of new indicator, new things that you can add, new regions that you can add, and so on. And so based on that, you should be able to interpret how it's going on the graph, the context, and do an analysis, and at the end, recommend something because you understand what's going on based on that. So you propose an analysis that is complete based on that and other information if you want, but you have to propose something that is like this. So that's called data literacy, going up to the capacity to argue with data. And as we said, that's not the biggest strength that you have for most of you based on your background and so on, which is normal. But at the same time, that's something that we need to work on and to evaluate. And we have been doing that a lot of times since the beginning. So that's why I'm just re-putting a bit of focus on that now to help you a bit as an extra time. But otherwise, that's something that we've seen many times already